Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to be diving into CSS again. So show of hands, how many people have been learning CSS and have been frustrated at some point in your learning? Everyone's hand. Wow. Okay, so my goal today is to make your experience learning CSS a little less frustrating. So it can become very time-consuming and frustrating, even just building a basic layout. And so what I want to do today is provide you a tool that helps speed up that process. And it's going to speed up your productivity as well. So in order to do that and show you how cool this tool is, we need to go over what it improves. All right, so let's start with our dreaded vertical align. There are a lot of ways to vertically align an element, and it depends on which browser you're loading. It depends on which element you're trying to align. So a couple of previous ways you might have used it. For inline elements, kind of just creating this illusionary vertical align by creating equal space on the top and bottom. And then even just trying to use vertical align middle. I bet you that's probably one of the first things you tried, which does work for inline elements, but sometimes you might not notice it if the line height isn't big enough to show you some space between the upper and lower boundaries. So for block level elements, one method is to drop the element and align the top of the element 50% of the containing element, but then it's pushed too far down. So if you know, well, right now you can do a couple of things. If you know the height, so let's say it's 200 pixels, you can actually move it back up 100 pixels and it'll be vertically centered. But if you don't know the height and you have dynamic height, which is very common, what you can do is same thing, drop it down to 50%. It's going to be a little bit too far, and use transform translate to bring it back up 50% of the height. Very convenient, not always very compatible. So this is the old way. This is how Flexbox does it. That's it. It's really, really simple. And that's what Flexbox was designed to do. Kind of just providing a lot of these advanced features of what CSS can do today in a very simple manner. So let's dive into Flexbox. I'm going to teach you Flexbox today. So kind of just take a second to look at some of the properties. These are just 6 parent properties that we're going to be going over. These are just properties we're going to be manipulating to affect the alignment of the children. Starting with justify content. Very descriptive. So flex start, if we want to align a row, flex start is going to bring the elements all the way to the start of the element on the left. If we want to align it to the right, we use flex n. Center centers all the elements. Space between creates equal spacing between each element. Notice how it doesn't create any spacing between the element and the outer edge. But what space around does is it creates equal spacing around each element. And so that's why you're going to see it might look like you don't have consistent spacing between here and here because the spacing isn't collapsing. But this will give you spacing around the edge. So align items, the dreaded vertical align, simplified. So again, we have flex start, starting from top to bottom. Flex n brings all the items down to the bottom. Center centers them nice and neatly, as you see. Stretch will stretch the elements to the basically the height of the container. And then baseline aligns the elements on the element's baseline. We're not going to dive into what baseline is, but that is an option. So flex direction, let's just say you wanted to change the direction of the items. Very simple. With flex direction, by default, with some of the ones we were building before, it would usually be set to row, going from left to right based on the source order. You can reverse that with row reverse. If you wanted to turn this, basically the display of elements, and turn it into a column, you could select column and same thing, reverse the column. Now flex wrap. Flexbox has a pretty cool feature where it tries to wrap a lot of the content in one row, and that might not always be desired, so you can force it to wrap onto the next line. You can also reverse that wrap as well. And then align content. Let's say you have wrapped items. Let's say you have multiple items. Then, same thing, all of these should look very familiar. We have flex start, flex end, center, space between, space around, and stretch. You've seen these already. They're just applying to multiple elements. Really, really convenient. So now we're going to jump into the child properties. The child properties, there are, I believe, around 6. And there are also short codes for a lot of this that you can look up, but I want to keep it simple. We're going to go over a few child properties that I think will be useful to you. So order, usually if you want to change the order of your elements, you would have to change the source order, the HTML. But if you're doing it for the display, if you are changing the order in the display and that's the primary purpose, why not do it with CSS? Isn't that what CSS is designed for? So let's do it in the CSS. By default, the orders are usually going to be set to 0. So even just setting one element to -1 is going to push it all the way to the start. And setting that same element to 1 is going to bring it all the way to the end. Very convenient. And you don't have to just order one element. You could change the entire order of each and every element. Flex grow, we're not going to dive into it too much. But what flex grow allows you to do, and I kind of look at it like a ratio. So you can actually give a value to an element. And so if that element, if that row has enough space, it'll allow that element to grow in ratio to its other elements. So really, really convenient. There's also flex shrink that does something very, very similar as well. And then align self. Let's say everything is aligned at the top and you just want one single element pushed down to the bottom. That's what align self is for. So very, very, I guess, complex control of your elements and the way you would do it with the old CSS, but it makes it so simple with Flexbox. So I want you to keep in mind that Flexbox, using even just a few of the properties that I provided, are going to help you build 99% of the features of your layout. And it's going to speed up that process. Now, one of the arguments has been cross-browser compatibility. And Flexbox has been out for a little while. But as you can see across the board, it is very compatible. And it's definitely growing. It's definitely being pushed in production applications. And you might notice a particular browser that might be lacking or behind a little bit on the on supporting Flexbox. But if you go, by the way, this website is caniuse.com, really, really useful tool for cross-browser compatibility, especially with CSS. If you go to known issues, and I believe it's still at the bottom, you can see all the cross-browser kind of code that you would be able to put into your production applications to make it compliant with all of your users. Really convenient. So, how do I get started? I'm going to tell you how I got started when I wanted to learn about Flexbox. I started out playing games. The game on the left, Flexbox Froggy, very, very fun. Very simple as well. I suggest you try it. It goes over a lot of the basic features that will help you get a jump start on building the same layout you would have built with old CSS. And then Flexbox Defense, if you kind of want to upgrade. Really, really fun game where you get to position these elements. And it's kind of just a tower defense game, but with Flexbox. It really is a lot of fun. And so between these two games, I promise you're going to learn almost everything you need to know about Flexbox to start including in a lot of your projects and getting more comfortable with it. It's really, really simple. I highly encourage you to try it out. You are going to be seeing that in your careers. It's definitely pushing forward and becoming a lot more common. So have fun with this and definitely get a start on this. Thank you.